Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something huge. We're tackling a claim that honestly changes how you look at everything.
It really does. We've got some dense but fascinating source material here. It's all about this idea, this assertion that when Jesus Christ became incarnate, it gave this inherent, unshakable dignity to, well, the entire created world.
Yeah, the whole cosmos. And our mission, as given to us by our listener, is to unpack this. We want to move past just, abstract theology.
Right, we're looking at the real-world consequences, the radical, ethical, even material impact of this one single event. The Creator entering time and space, becoming part of it.
And it's way bigger than just human salvation, isn't it?
Yes.
The sources are arguing for a fundamental change in status for everything physical, all based on who Christ is and what he did by entering.
Exactly, and right away, we hit this core tension. The sources call it the scandal of particularity.
Okay, what's that about?
Well, think about older philosophical ideas of God, often very transcendent, distant, maybe like a cosmic watchmaker who sets things up and steps back, separate from the messiness of the world.
Sure, detach.
But Christian revelation, especially with the Incarnation, just blows that up. It claims God gets involved in the most intimate way possible by becoming a permanent physical part of creation itself.
So not just a visitor passing through.
Not at all. A permanent resident. And that changes everything about the relationship between God and the material world.
Okay, so the physical isn't some kind of spiritual problem to escape from. It becomes, well, divine territory, in a way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, before we dive headfirst into the text, we probably need to lay out the key concepts. There are three pillars holding this whole argument up.
Good idea. What are they?
Okay, first, logos, that's the divine word, the reason, identified as the eternal agent of creation.
Got it. Logos.
Second, incarnation, the incarnatus, literally making flesh, the enfleshment, the act of the eternal Son taking on human nature.
Logos, incarnation. And the third?
Third, and this is crucial, dignity, but not dignity in the sense of something earned, like through ability or achievement.
Ah, okay. How is it defined here, then?
It's defined as ontological worth, an inherent honor that's bestowed on creation simply because of this divine act of solidarity. It's a gift, not a wage.
Okay. Logos, incarnation, bestowed dignity.
Got it. Let's unpack this then. And I guess to really get the weight of the incarnation, we have to start with who exactly did the incarnating.
Absolutely. We need to establish this fundamental link the sources keep highlighting. The Creator is the Redeemer.
Right, so the argument is the one who redeems creation isn't some outside contractor brought in for repairs.
Exactly. If it was just an outsider fixing things, that wouldn't confer the same level of honor, would it? But the New Testament is emphatic. Jesus Christ, the Redeemer, is the very same one who authored and, crucially, sustains the entire cosmos.
And the go-to text for this, the really profound starting point, has to be the opening of John's Gospel, defining the Logos. Oh, absolutely. John 1. It starts with arguably one of the most theologically packed statements ever written. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
He was in the beginning with God.
All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Just wow.
Now, to really feel the impact of what John's doing there, we need to remember that logos wasn't just some random word he picked. It was already loaded with meaning, right? Especially in the Hellenistic world.
Hugely loaded. For thinkers like the Stoics, the Logos was often this impersonal principle, like cosmic reason, the underlying order of the universe, a kind of abstract blueprint.
Almost like a law of nature.
Kind of, yeah. And for someone like Philo of Alexandria trying to bridge Jewish thought and Greek philosophy, the Logos became a sort of intermediary, a go-between connecting the totally transcendent God and the material world.
So John steps into that conversation.
He steps in, uses their term, but then completely redefines it. Radically. He says the Logos is not an impersonal force. It's not a subordinate go-between. The Logos is a divine person.
So he takes this grand, abstract idea of cosmic order and basically says, that's Jesus.
Pretty much. And look how he uses the grammar in that first verse to lock down three critical facts. First, eternal preexistence. In the beginning was the Word.
Echoing Genesis 1, but also saying the Word was already there before the beginning.
Exactly. He's uncreated, eternal. Second, distinct personhood. The Word was with God. That Greek phrase, pros ton leon, it's more intimate than just with.
Like face to face.
That's often how it's translated. It implies this deep dynamic communion, a relationship between two distinct persons, the Father and the Word, existing within the Godhead before anything else was made. The Logos isn't just an attribute of God, he's a distinct, eternal person.
Okay, but wait. If the Logos is eternal and distinct from God, how did John stop his audience, especially those used to Greek ideas, from just thinking, okay, so two gods? How did the sources handle that potential misunderstanding?
Ah, that's the brilliance of the third clause. And the Word was God. Theos on ho logos. This nails down their shared divine nature, the essence. But the Greek structure is careful. It avoids saying the Logos was a god, which would have suggested a lesser secondary deity, exactly what some Hellenistic thinkers might have assumed about an intermediary.
So it asserts full divinity without suggesting two separate gods.
Precisely. It closes off that interpretation, full shared divinity. And then, having established who the Logos is, John immediately moves to what he does, his universal agency. All things were made through him.
Followed by that absolute statement. Without him was not anything made that was made. No loopholes.
None. Everything that exists owes its existence to this specific divine person. That's already a massive statement about the value of creation, isn't it?
Absolutely. But Paul in Colossians seems to take it even further, cosmically speaking. Colossians 1.
He really does. Paul calls the Son the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation.
Okay, that phrase, firstborn, prototokos. We absolutely have to clarify that one because historically that caused a lot of trouble, right? Groups like the Arians used it to argue Christ was the first created being.
Huge point of contention. It's vital to get this right. Paul isn't using protokosi to mean first in time, like the first thing off the assembly line. He's using it in the sense of rank, preeminence, sovereignty. Christ is supreme over all creation, not the first product of creation.
So it's about priority and authority, not temporal beginning.
Exactly. And Paul immediately backs this up by explaining Christ's total relationship to the cosmos. He shows Christ is the origin, the means, and the ultimate goal of everything.
Yeah, that threefold relationship in Colossians 1:16, the sphere, the agent, the goal.
Let's break that down. Sphere. Creation happens in him, ono2. Everything depends causally on the Logos, agent. It happens through him, dio2. He's the one carrying out the creative act. And goal, this is maybe the most dignifying part. It's all created for him. It's auton.
Meaning creation isn't just some random accident.
Not at all. It has a purpose, a telos. It's ultimately directed towards the Son's glory and his purposes. And this covers everything visible, invisible, thrones, dominions, rulers, authorities, all of it.
So even things we can't see or things incredibly vast or incredibly tiny, they exist for him. But the clincher, the thing that really seals this inescapable link, is the sustaining power Paul mentions next. Verse 17. And in him all things hold together.
That verb, so the stoken, hold together. Cohere, it's in the perfect tense in Greek, indicating a continuing state resulting from past action, but often translated with a present continuous sense in English. It implies an ongoing reality. Christ isn't just the one who wound up the universal clock and let it run.
He's actively keeping it running.
He's actively maintaining the coherence, the very fabric of reality, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces moment by moment. The universe isn't self-sustaining. It holds together because of his power, if you were to, withdraw that power.
Oof, back to nothing.
Essentially. And then, just to really hammer it home, the writer of Hebrews confirms this. God spoke through the Son, through whom also he made the universe, and adds that the Son is upholding the universe by the word of his power.
And Hebrews does something even more dramatic, right? Taking an Old Testament passage about Yahweh and applying it directly to the Son.
Yes. It quotes Psalm 102, which is clearly addressed to Yahweh, the God of Israel. In the beginning, Lord, you founded the earth, and applies it straight to the Son. It's this incredibly bold identification, leaving zero doubt about their shared divine identity.
Okay, so the link is undeniable. The agent of creation is the agent of redemption, which means redemption isn't some plan B from an outside party.
It's the Creator stepping in to restore his own creation, his own handiwork, which he already valued immensely from the start. The world is affirmed simply by who its author is.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. We know who the Creator is. Now, the second pillar, the Incarnation itself. If the Creator is the Logos, what does it mean when that Logos physically enters the creation he made? This is where it gets really wild, isn't it?
This is the absolute core of it. What does the permanent joining of the divine and the material mean for the status of the material world? We're talking about the doctrine of the Incarnation, the word made flesh. This event, this act, is ground zero theologically for understanding creation's dignity. Why? because it fundamentally reverses that assumed distance between God and the physical world.
Through the hypostatic union. That's the technical term, right? We
Yeah.
probably need to unpack that a bit for the listener. It's about the two natures of Christ in one person.
Exactly. Hypostatic union. It's the Church's way of saying that the one eternal, divine person of the Son of God, the Logos, took on a complete human nature, body, soul, mind, will, without stopping being divine. He didn't swap divinity for humanity. He added humanity to his divinity.
Okay. And to understand why this is so crucial for the dignity of matter, we need to look at how it was formally defined, particularly at the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD.
Chalcedon is key. It was convened specifically because various ideas were floating around that threatened either Christ's true divinity or his true humanity. The council needed precise language to guard the reality of this union.
Right. They came up with that famous definition. One person, hypostasis, two natures, divine and human, united. How did it go? Without confusion, without change, without division, without separation.
Those four negative adverbs, aisynkeitos, atreptos, adieritos, atristos, they're like guardrails. They tell us what the union isn't to protect what it is.
Okay, let's quickly touch on those. Yeah. Without confusion and without change seem aimed at protecting the divine nature.
Primarily, yes, but also the integrity of the human. Without confusion, aisynkeitos pushed back against views like monophysitism, which basically said the human nature got swallowed up by the divine like a drop of honey dissolving in the sea.
Meaning he wasn't truly human anymore.
Exactly. It would make the humanity just an appearance. Without change, atreptius, made sure everyone understood that the divine Logos himself didn't mutate or diminish by becoming human. Divinity remained fully divine.
And the other two, without division and without separation, they seem to protect the unity of his person and the reality of the human side.
Correct. Without division, adieritos, and without separation, achistos, were crucial against ideas like Nestorianism, which tended to split Christ into two persons, almost a divine person and a human person working together, but not truly one. Chalcedon insists it's one person, the Son of God, acting and experiencing through both natures.
And the killer point here is the permanence. This isn't a temporary costume.
Absolutely not. It's a permanent, unbreakable joining of God to full human nature. What God joined in Christ is never undone. This wasn't a God pretending to be human like in some pagan myths. This was God becoming human forever.
Which brings us back to John 1.14, the verse that just lands us with incredible power. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
The climax of the prologue, the eternal Word, the agent of creation, enters the messy material world he made. And that word sarx, flesh, it's so important.
It's not just body, is it? It's more visceral.
It's the whole package. Human nature in its entirety, including the fragility, the mortality, the physicality. The Word embraced the concrete reality of being human, not some idealized version.
And then dwelt among us, that Greek word, eskunusin. He pitched his tent, or tabernacled. That's dripping with Old Testament imagery.
It's a direct callback to the tabernacle in the wilderness. That portable tent was where God's presence, his glory, the Shekinah, resided among the Israelites. John is making a staggering claim. God's true, localized, personal presence isn't in a building or a cloud anymore.
It's in a person.
It's permanently located in the embodied person of Jesus Christ. The sanctuary became a human being.
Wow. So the Incarnation doesn't just build a bridge over the gap between God and creation. The sources seem to be saying it obliterates the gap altogether by uniting both sides in one person.
That's the core idea. This is the primary way dignity is conferred, through proximity, divine proximity. Think about what it signals about matter. If the creator, sustainer, the infinite God, considers the created order specifically human nature, which includes matter worthy enough to enter into, to unite with himself permanently,
then the status of that created order has to change, right?
fundamentally and forever. It's an affirmation, a sanctification, a claiming. The world isn't some abandoned project or a mistake. It's the place where the king himself has chosen to live permanently. Matter itself becomes worthy of reverence because God himself has embraced it.
Okay, so the doctrine itself clearly elevates matter. But, to really grasp how radical this was, it helps to look at the pushback it got in the early centuries. Understanding the opposition kind of throws the affirmation into sharper relief.
Absolutely. And the main intellectual rival, the biggest opposition, came from various forms of Gnosticism. Gnosticism, at its heart, was deeply pessimistic about the cosmos. It operated on a principle of radical dualism.
Spirit good, matter bad.
That's the gist. The spiritual realm was seen as good, pure light. But the material world, Heil, was considered inherently evil, dark, a prison created by mistake.
which means the Genesis creation story, God calling creation good, had to be wrong in their view, so they needed a different explanation for where this bad material world came from.
Exactly. They couldn't accept that the ultimate perfect God would create something so flawed and messy, so they invented this idea of the demiurge.
The flawed creator.
Right. A lesser, often ignorant, or even malevolent divine being who botched the job of creation, trapping pure spirits within these prisons of flesh. And they often identified this demiurge with the God of the Old Testament, which they saw as judgmental and inferior.
So for Gnostics, salvation couldn't possibly mean redeeming the body or the world.
No way. Salvation was escape, liberation from the evil body, from the corrupt material world. And you achieve this escape through gnosis, secret, esoteric knowledge revealed only to the initiated.
And this whole worldview dictated how they saw Christ, didn't it?
Yeah.
A truly good divine spirit couldn't possibly get mixed up with evil matter.
It forced them into one of two main camps regarding Christology. One was Docetism, from the Greek dokit, to seem. They taught Christ was pure spirit and only appeared to have a physical body. His suffering, death, all an illusion, like a phantom wearing a human suit.
Protecting the divine from contamination.
Exactly. The other main view was separationism. This argued that the divine Christ, the Logos, descended onto the human Jesus, maybe at his baptism, but then crucially left him before the suffering and crucifixion. Again, the divine spirit escapes before getting truly tainted by physical death.
Okay, so against this backdrop of cosmic despair and matter-hating, figures like Irenaeus of Lyons step up. He becomes a real champion for creation.
Irenaeus is crucial. Writing around the late 2nd century, his major work, Against Heresies, was a direct point-by-point takedown of the Gnostic worldview. His core argument rested on God's consistency. The God who created is the same God who redeems. He accused the Gnostics of blasphemy for calling God's plasma his handiwork, especially the human body, evil.
And he used that theological concept of recapitulation and ecophylasis to counter their dualism, right?
Yes, recapitulation was his master concept. It means Christ headed up again, or summed up all of creation, particularly humanity, in himself to restore it. He saw Adam as the first head, who failed, and Christ as the second Adam, the new head, who succeeded, reversing the fall.
And the key point is the continuity.
Absolutely key. The same word who originally created humanity became human to save humanity. If Christ wasn't truly human, truly flesh, as the Docetists claimed, then this whole act of reheading humanity, restoring it, would be a charade. It wouldn't actually connect with us.
So for Irenaeus, the incarnation wasn't just God's emergency fix after Adam messed up. It was part of the original plan.
He strongly implies that. The enfleshed Son is the true archetype, the pattern that Adam was originally modeled after. This makes embodied human life central to God's purpose, not some unfortunate detour.
And importantly, salvation for Irenaeus isn't about escaping the body.
No, it's about transforming it. That's captured in his famous line, something like, "In his immeasurable love, he became what we are so that he might make us what he is." Salvation is the glorification, even the divinization, of our whole embodied selves, not getting rid of the body.
Okay, fast forward a couple of centuries. Athanasius of Alexandria comes along with On the Incarnation. What was this main angle? How did he argue for the necessity of this?
Athanasius focused heavily on the logic rooted in God's own character. His starting point was, God is inherently good and God is all-powerful. Therefore, Athanasius argued, it would be completely unfitting, unseemly, atopon was his word for God, to just let his good creation fall apart into corruption and non-existence.
It would make God look weak, or like he didn't care about his own work.
Exactly. It would contradict his goodness and his power. So God's own nature compelled him to intervene directly, personally, to renew what he had made good in the first place.
And the logic then flows. Only the one who created everything ex nihilo out of nothing would have the power to recreate it, to overcome death.
Precisely. And the only way to conquer death was to enter into death himself, which required taking on a body capable of dying. The Word had to become flesh to undo death from the inside. The renewal had to come from the original source, the Word himself.
Wow. So this whole long battle with Gnosticism really highlights a critical principle the sources emphasize. Christology determines cosmology.
That's the takeaway. What you believe about who Christ is specifically, the reality of his two natures, divine and human, in one person directly dictates how you value the created world. If you accept the incarnation in its fullness, you must affirm the fundamental goodness and redeemability of matter and the body. To trash creation is, implicitly, to trash the incarnation itself.
Okay, so the incarnation gives dignity to the whole cosmos. But the sources really zero in on the unique, almost breathtaking honor it gives to human nature specifically.
Right. And this takes us back to Genesis 1, to the concept of the imago Dei, the image of God. The whole creation declares God's glory, sure, but humanity alone is said to be made in his image.
And the New Testament kind of refines that idea, doesn't it? Pointing to Christ as the true, the perfect image. Like in Colossians 1:1 fim, he is the image of the invisible God.
Exactly. The understanding becomes humanity was originally created according to the pattern of the Son, the perfect image. So the Incarnation is the moment when the original perfect image, the Son, takes on the created, now flawed image, us, humanity, precisely to restore it back to what it was always meant to be, to fulfill that original divine intent.
Which leads directly to this idea of ontological worth. Dignity based not on what we can do, but on what we fundamentally are.
It's grounded in our very being, not our abilities or functions. And that's because our nature has been honored in this unbelievable way by God himself. I think Nicholas Wolterstorff, the philosopher, captures this really well.
What does he say?
He talks about it as an extraordinary honor. His point is something like this. To each and every one of us, the second person of the Trinity pays the incredible honor of assuming our shared nature, thereby sharing that nature with us.
That shifts the whole basis of dignity, doesn't it? It's not something we achieve or possess inherently through our own merit. It's bestowed. It's based on God's action towards us.
And crucially, it's universal, because Christ didn't just assume the nature of one particular person or group. He assumed human nature itself, the very essence of what it means to be human.
Which means he unites himself in some profound way to every single person who shares that nature.
Every single one. Regardless of race, gender, social status, ability, stage of development. Pope St. John Paul II really emphasized this, saying that through the Incarnation, the Son of God united himself with every human being right from the moment of conception. The dignity is therefore inherent, infinite, and can't be taken away.
This feels incredibly relevant for a lot of modern debates, especially around things like human rights, bioethics, disability.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you base human worth purely on capacities like rationality, autonomy, consciousness, self-awareness,
You inevitably run into problems with what philosophers call the marginal cases.
exactly. What about the unborn, or someone in a coma, or someone with profound cognitive disabilities, or advanced dementia? If dignity depends on exercising certain functions at a high level, do these individuals have less worth? Do they lose their rights? Secular philosophies based on capacity really struggle here.
But the incarnational grounding seems to sidestep that whole problem.
It provides a much more robust foundation, arguably. Dignity isn't tied to performance. It's a gift, bestowed because God himself chose to share our nature. It holds true even when capacities are limited or absent, because it's based on God's act, not ours. Wolterstorff again talks about it being rooted in God's honoring regard.
So when we encounter another human being, regardless of their condition,
We're encountering someone who shares the very nature that the eternal Son of God took upon himself permanently. That dramatically raises the ethical stakes.
it means treating anyone as less than fully human isn't just a social wrong. It's, in a way, an offense against the honor God himself bestowed on that nature by uniting it to his own person.
It gives universal human rights a theological anchor that isn't dependent on fluctuating abilities or social usefulness. It compels us to uphold the dignity of every single human life, especially the weakest and most vulnerable, precisely because their nature is the nature God embraced.
Okay, so we've got the dignity of human nature established. But you can't isolate human nature from physicality, right? If the logos became sarx, flesh, then we absolutely have to talk about the destiny of that flesh, our actual bodies, and by extension, the whole material cosmos.
Exactly. The promise embedded in the Incarnation isn't just spiritual, it's profoundly material. It points towards the redemption of matter itself. That statement, the Word became flesh, is like God's ultimate stamp of approval on the physical body.
If the body was inherently bad, or just a temporary shell to be discarded, why would the Son of God take one on, and not just temporarily, but permanently?
Precisely. His entire saving work was done in a body. He lived, ate, slept, taught, suffered, died a physical death, and crucially was physically resurrected, all embodied actions.
And the Incarnation acts as a kind of theological balance beam here, doesn't it? Correcting two opposite and equally problematic views of the body.
It really does. On one side, it pushes back against extreme asceticism or Gnostic-like views that see the body as inherently flawed, a drag on the spirit, something to be punished or escaped from.
The idea that spirituality means denying the physical.
Right. The Incarnation says, no, the body isn't the enemy. It's the necessary means through which we live out our relationship with God and others. Our hands serve, our voices pray, our physical presence matters. It's the arena of holiness, not its opposite.
But then, on the other side, it also corrects a purely materialistic view, like hedonism, that just sees the body as a tool for pleasure, with no lasting significance.
Yes. If the body is just meat, then ultimately, what you do with it doesn't matter beyond immediate consequences. But the Incarnation says our bodies are incredibly significant. They're called temples of the Holy Spirit. We're told to offer them as living sacrifices. Why? Because they are destined for glory, having shared in the nature Christ assumed. What we do with them matters eternally.
And the absolute linchpin for this whole argument about the body's destiny is the physical resurrection of Christ.
Right.
Paul calls it the first fruits in 1 Corinthians 15.
The resurrection is everything here. It's the guarantee, the down payment, the prototype. It shows us what our ultimate hope is. And it's not escaping into some disembodied, purely spiritual heaven that's more like the Gnostic hope, actually.
The Christian hope is embodied.
It's for a future glorified physical existence in a renewed creation. A body like Christ's resurrected body, still physical, recognizable, but transformed, no longer subject to decay or death. Salvation encompasses the whole person, body and soul together.
Okay, and if the body is validated and destined for glory, the implications have to ripple outwards, right, to the entire physical universe.
They have to. Otherwise, the redemption is incomplete. If the one who created and sustains all things only redeems the non-physical part, something's missing. The scope has to be cosmic.
And the sources really lean into this cosmic dimension, like that Colossians passage again, 1.20, God planning to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven.
That's the vision. The Incarnation isn't just about saving souls. It's the beginning of the restoration of the entire created order. It's like the beachhead, the foothold, establishing God's ultimate reclaiming of everything he made. It guarantees he's not just going to trash the original creation and start over somewhere else.
So the trajectory is towards renewal, perfection, completion, not annihilation.
That seems to be the inescapable logic. The Creator is finishing and perfecting his work, not abandoning it. Think of Romans 8.
Where Paul talks about the creation groaning.
Exactly, like in labor pains. The whole cosmos is described as eagerly waiting, longing for liberation from its current state of futility and decay. It's suffering, yes, but it's suffering with hope.
And its destiny is tied up with ours.
Inextricably linked. Paul says the creation will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. When humanity is fully redeemed and glorified, the rest of creation shares in that liberation. So the dignity the Incarnation gives the world isn't just a present reality, it's a promise of its ultimate glorious material future.
Okay, this has been incredibly rich theologically, but now we hit the bottom line, the question our listener really needs answered. So what? What difference does all this make? How does believing God became physically part of the world change how we actually live in it day to day?
It has to change everything. The sources point to at least 3 major practical consequences. First, it grounds a radical mandate for stewardship. That original command back in Genesis to work and take care of the garden.
It's intensified.
Massively intensified. Because the earth isn't just raw material anymore. It's not just property given to us by an absent landlord. Because of the Incarnation, it's become, in a profound sense, the dwelling place of God himself. It's been sanctified by his physical presence within it.
So our relationship with the environment shifts from just management to something more like reverence.
Exactly. Stewardship becomes an act of reverence, maybe even kinship. We're not just trying to manage resources efficiently. We're caring for a place that God has honored by choosing to inhabit and redeem. From this perspective, polluting a river isn't just bad environmental practice.
It's like desecrating a holy site.
That's the implication. Needlessly destroying habitats, exploiting resources unsustainably, it takes on a different ethical weight when you see the world through an incarnational lens. It compels an ecological ethic rooted not just in prudence, but in love and respect for God's chosen home.
Okay, stewardship deepened. What's the second consequence?
A non-negotiable foundation for social justice. When the Son of God took on human flesh, he didn't just take on an idealized humanity. He embraced the whole messy reality, including vulnerability, poverty, suffering, marginalization.
He entered into the places of human weakness.
He did. And by doing so, he created this unbreakable bond of solidarity with all humanity, but perhaps especially with those who experience that vulnerability most acutely: the poor, the suffering, the oppressed.
And there's historical evidence that the early church saw this connection immediately. You mentioned Ignatius of Antioch.
Right. Back in the early 2nd century, Ignatius observed something fascinating. He noticed that the groups who denied the reality of Christ's flesh, the Docetists, who said he only seemed human, these same groups, he said, showed no interest in love, no care for the widow, the orphan, the oppressed, the prisoner.
Wow. So denying the physical reality of Christ led directly to neglecting the physical needs of others.
It's a direct correlation in Ignatius's view. If Christ didn't really suffer, then our suffering doesn't ultimately matter to God, and there's no real theological imperative to alleviate it. But if you affirm the Incarnation, if you believe God truly entered into human suffering,
Then caring for the suffering becomes a way of caring for Christ himself.
precisely, it grounds justice work squarely in the person of Christ. When Jesus says in Matthew 25, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me," the Incarnation gives that statement incredible weight. Serving the hungry, the sick, the imprisoned isn't just a good deed. It's encountering and serving the incarnate Lord who has united himself permanently with their human nature. Justice becomes an essential outflow of faith, not an optional extra.
Stewardship, social justice. What's the third major consequence?
It gives us a sacramental vision of the world. The Incarnation itself is the ultimate sacrament, isn't it? The visible, tangible, physical manifestation of the invisible God.
God making himself known through matter.
Exactly. And because God united himself with matter in the person of Christ, matter itself is elevated. It's shown to be capable of carrying and mediating spiritual reality, grace, the divine presence. The physical isn't a barrier to the spiritual, it can be a vehicle for it.
Which explains, theologically, why churches use physical things like water in baptism, or bread and wine in communion, or oil for anointing.
That's the principle. If God used flesh to save us, then physical elements can certainly be used to convey his grace. But that sacramental principle extends way beyond formal church rituals.
How so?
It encourages us to see the entire universe as potentially sacramental, like the book of nature idea. Paul says in Romans 1 that God's invisible qualities are clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. The physical world itself can point us towards God, reveal something of him. It's constantly speaking if we learn how to listen.
And this view also relates to things like religious art, right? Icons, statues, paintings, things that have sometimes been controversial.
It provides the core justification for them. The old prohibition against making images of God was largely because God was invisible. But in the Incarnation, God gave us a visible image, his Son, Jesus Christ.
We can point to Christ and say, that's what God looks like in human form.
Exactly. So, using physical art to depict Christ or the saints isn't seen as idolatry in this view. It's a consequence of God himself becoming visible. The art becomes a window, a reminder, a focal point for prayer matter, acting as a gateway to contemplating the divine reality that entered matter. The incarnational worldview flips our perception. The physical world isn't a wall blocking us from God. It's potentially a bridge leading us to him. Hashtag outro Elliot.
Wow. Okay, this has been quite the journey, a really deep dive. We started with Christ's identity as the eternal Logos, the Creator himself. Then we moved to the absolute defining event, the Incarnation, God permanently joining himself to human nature.
And we saw how that belief forced the early church to defend the goodness of matter against world-denying philosophies like Gnosticism, how it provides this incredibly strong ontological grounding for universal human dignity.
Right, a dignity based on God's acts, not our abilities. And finally, how this all points towards the ultimate redemption, not just of humanity, but of our bodies in the entire cosmos.
The consistent thread is this bestowed honor. The dignity of the world isn't something it earned, it's a gift. A permanent status change that happened the moment the Creator became flesh and dwelt among us, forever sanctifying the created order by his presence and claiming it for glory.
So as we wrap up, let's leave our listener with that final provocative thought, something to mull over. Given everything we've discussed, that the material world is inherently good, that it's destined for perfection, that it's capable of mediating grace because God himself entered it, how does that fundamentally change how you see and interact with the physical stuff around you every day?
Yeah, that's the question. When you look at your own body or the natural world or even just the mundane objects around you, do you see them as just temporary, disposable resources you use while waiting for some purely spiritual future? Or because of the Incarnation, do you see them as being, in Gerard Manley Hopkins' famous words, perpetually charged with the grandeur of God? Does it change how you treat them, how you value them? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.